In this video I'm going to show you how to model a low poly missile turret in Blender. It's pretty easy and suitable for beginners. As always, I try to give you general tips on good workflows so you can create your own stuff. This video is part of my mini-series on how to create a missile turret game asset. We go all the way from the default cube in Blender to launching a bunch of target-seeking missiles in Unity. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and liking this video. I even hired a sexy dancer to seduce you. Well, the pictures looked a lot better on Craigslist and I also thought I'd get a woman. But he wanted the money up front, so I'm stuck with this guy now. Anyhow, subscribing and liking really helps this channel to grow. Now enjoy the tutorial. Okay, so let's get started by modeling this thing that's actually going to hold the rockets. So we're just going to model one side and then in the end we're going to use a mirror modifier. But we don't need it for now. And of course the style is going to be low poly, so we're going to keep things fairly blocky, no small details, just keep it simple. And yeah, we're also going to use the default cube. So select it, tab to go into edit mode, A to select all, and then I'm going to scale on the x-axis, so S to scale, X to lock it to the x-axis, maybe like this, and a little bit on the Z, so S and then Z. And I'm holding down shift to fine tune it only a little bit, just so it's not a perfect square from the front. And it's going to be fairly easy for you to adjust the length on the x-axis, just like moving things around. But I think it's just a little bit more difficult to do it on the z-axis. So I would choose a form that kind of fits. Now we're going to hit 2 to go into edge mode. And I select those 4 edges. And then I hit Ctrl B, drag it out to bevel it. On a side note, if you see F5, F6, that's just my undo and redo. Okay, so let's hit Ctrl R for a loop cut. And drag this one to here. Then 3, I'm going to, for face mode, and I alt click and select this edge, so I get this one here. And then I'm going to hit Alt E to bring up the extrude menu, and here we have extrude faces along normals. Control Alt L, that's a custom shortcut that I'm using. So just this, I'm holding down shift again to fine tune it. Okay. Then I select this face and I hit E and I drag this in a little bit. So this is going to be our front. Next thing, I'm going to make 3 more loop cuts. So Control R, and with the mouse wheel I'm gonna hit it twice, so I have 3 loop cuts. Click here and let's see. Now I'm gonna confirm this first. Now I'm gonna hit Control B to just bevel the loop cuts, right? And with those still selected, I'm gonna hit GX so I can move it on the x-axis. And I want to move it so it's kind of like here, so those look the same. And once again, I'm gonna hit Alt E, extrude along normals, holding down shift like this. Let's see. And then I'm going to scale them on the x-axis. So S, X, just make them, oh, sorry. I had the origin, the 3D cursor, but we should use individual origins because I want every single one of them scaled inwards. So S, X, and just do it like this. And you can even scale them a little bit. Just say S. So they stay like this. I think that looks kind of cool. I'm gonna make one more loop cut, so Control R and make it here. Once again, just click it and then I hit Control B to bevel it. Maybe like this. And this one I want to extrude inward, which is a little bit dangerous because we're gonna place the rockets here, right? So we don't want to intrude too much, so it's not gonna show the actual holes that we're going to cut into this thing. So I'm just going to hit Alt E, extrude a little bit, maybe like this, should be fine. Okay. And then I hit 3, face mode, and scale this one just a tiny bit inward. So it looks like a bit rounded in the end. And then I loop cut all the way through the top. I'm gonna use 2. So let's see, this looks kind of good. And I'm going to 3 into face mode, and I select those 3, those. I can also do it this way, just select them and then control to deselect those ones. Okay. So if I were to just extrude them inwards, I'm gonna start using my shortcut now, Control Alt L. So if I were just going to extrude, you see it goes inside here. Maybe that's what you want, maybe you don't. You could leave it like that. If you want to keep this mostly planar, what you can do is first make sure that you don't using auto match, because what we do now is we hit Control Alt L, so extrude along normals, and I just click OK. So they are still extruded now, and now I can just scale them. And you see now it's not going down, right? So just a little bit of detail here, maybe like this. And also we could bring this up, so maybe E to extrude. Let's hit those 2, Control B. So they're kind of on the same side, something like this. Just making like super simple details. And I think the front, I'm even gonna leave it at that. You could do something like, let's see, 3, select those faces, E to extrude them, S to scale them, just a little bit of detail, and then we could color this differently. I mean, just an idea. All in all, I just want to keep things blocky, no small details. We could do one more thing. Let's select this face and hit Shift D to duplicate it. And let's see, I'm gonna separate it. So P, separate by selection, it's its own object now. Tab to go into object mode, select this one, and then tab to go into the edit mode of this new face / object. And here just select the face, E to extrude a little bit. And not actually, let's make it a bit smaller first. So S, Z, scale it like this. Now I'm going to extrude it. Let's see. I'm going to bevel here and here. Control B. Maybe even 2. Yeah, I'm going to use the mouse wheel to just make 2 bevels, just to have a little bit of variation. And then we can just loop cut a few times through it. And that's one of the reasons why I prefer to separate it, because now if I loop cut, I don't make like tons of vertices through the entire object, but only a few ones here. Let's see, this. I'm gonna hit I to insert and just click OK, and then SX, scale it inward a little bit, maybe like this, and then E to extrude inward. Yeah, so it's gonna be on the side. Then the other side, that's where we're gonna connect the turret. Okay, so next thing is we want to cut in the holes. Now we're just going to make a cylinder, then we use an array modifier so we can have a bunch of those perfectly organized, and then we're going to use a Boolean modifier. So we're going to use the cylinders and say cut out those cylinders out of our main object. So I'm going to say Shift A, mesh cylinder. I think 8 sides are totally fine for this kind of low poly look. So then I'm going to say RY90. I'm going to scale this down a lot in general. Then I say SX, scale it up. I want it to go all the way through. We're going to hide this one in the end anyway, so you can just make it really long. And I think it's still pretty big, so I'm going to scale it down a bit more. Let's see, 3 to go into side view. I just move it a bit with G. Let's see, let's add the modifier first. So add modifier, array. Oh no, sorry. First, since we rotated and scaled it, let's go ahead, Control A, apply rotation and scale. So otherwise the modifier might be a bit confusing with the axis. So add modifier array, not on the x, we want on the y, let's say 1, and also on the z. No, sorry, we don't want that. We're gonna use 2 arrays. So factor is 1, so they're exactly right next to each other, right? We want some gap, so just increase this one here, and then count, let's go with 3. And then we can just duplicate this modifier. But now instead of the y, we're gonna use the z, 1.2. How about minus 1.2? This direction, yes. Okay. 3, I'm gonna go into this, and I think we can increase, for 1 we could just make it a little bit bigger. Let's see, as scaling it up. And then I'm gonna try to position it in the middle, so GZ. No, it's already there. GY. A little bit to the side. Looks pretty decent. Okay, so this is our cutter, and well, let's scale on the X a little bit, so it's not too extreme. On a side note, we're going to export it with those things here, and we're gonna split them very soon. The reason is it's just gonna make things easier in Unity. When we place the rockets, then we actually have those objects, and we can just tell Unity, hey, grab all those objects, save the position, hide it, and then place a rocket at that position. So now we select the original object, add modifier, Boolean difference, and we're gonna select our new object. And maybe we should name something. So the cube is now called, I call it missile chamber. And this one is side detail. And I'm gonna select it and drag it over the missile chamber and hold down Shift, so it's parented now. And then we have the cutter, the cylinder, which we also want to parent to the missile chamber, right? So select it, Shift, and drop it. And it didn't work. Select it, Shift, come on. Nope. No, it worked. Okay. And if you hit H, you can see, since we're using the Boolean modifier, we're already cutting the holes in there. So Shift A, mesh, cylinder. I think we want a little bit more sides, maybe 12. That's fine. And I want to move this up so the pivot is exactly in the center. Right, this is 2 units long now, depth is 2, so I'm gonna go into edit mode. So edit mode, and then I say GZ1. So it moves up, and you can see the pivot is right here. It's just gonna be a little bit easier when it's game asset, so we know this is where we're gonna place it. Now I'm gonna make this a bit smaller, so select this one, GZ, move it down. I'm gonna cut those 2. Like this, so I can make some feet here. Let's see, 3 face mode. Always gonna select 2. We could use some modifiers here to make things faster, but I think if you have that, like that few details, it's fine. E to extrude, like this. 2. I'm gonna go into edge mode, and I select the top ones here. And then I say GZ, move them down, so it's kind of like the feet. Then 3 face mode. I want to intrude it, but I want to have like a sharp edge. So what I say is E to extrude, just click OK. So now we have 2 overlapping faces here, and then S, I scale the new one in. Now that I'm doing that, I realize I could also go back and just say I to inset. So maybe like this. Then I'm going to extrude. So this is going to be like the rotating part. And now for this case, since I want to make it bigger, I'm going to say E extrude, just click to confirm it, and then S, I'm going to scale this one bigger. Let's see, I'm going to E extrude this. No, I want this to be a bit bigger than the bottom, just for the visual effect. And then E, think like this. And now I want 2 loop cuts. So loop cut, Control R, use the mouse wheel. And now I select this edge loop. So to edge mode, Alt click and Shift Alt click this edge and scale them in. So you got a little bit of like this round shape going on here. Okay, for the top, I'm going to select this face, the top face, and extrude a little bit. Now I want to extrude those things on the side, and I need to cut this face up. And just to keep like the nice geometry that we have here, I'm going to duplicate it. So Shift D, just click to confirm, P, separate by selection, and again, tab, object mode, selected, tab, edit mode. So here's our new face. And now I go with K into knife tools, select those two. Then it's just gonna snap to the vertex anyway. And the weird shading is of course because we have 2 perfectly overlapping faces. You could of course just cut the top face of this entire object, but again, every time you start cutting, geometry gets a bit weird, so you know, you might want to do some editing. Now I select those 2 and just extrude. Maybe we could bevel this one time. Yep, something like this. Okay. You know what thing is, this isn't really gonna be where people are looking anyway. This is where people are looking, the rockets that are flying, so like this things inside here. Okay. Anyhow, I can delete this face, so X, delete faces. Okay, now we need the wheels, so I'm going to go back to the original, select this, select this face, Shift S, cursor to selected, and let's see, I'm just gonna make the wheel, no, it should be separated. I'm going to object mode, sorry. I can do it in here and select this one and say Shift A, cylinder, 12 sides, yeah, why not? And I rotate on the Y, so RY, nope, I rotate on the X, so RX 90, and then scale on the Y, so SY, scale on all axes, and GZ, move it up a bit. Let's see, I'm actually going to make this side, so select this face and shift select this face, I to insert, as you can see here. If you didn't hit like the white thing, you can also just scale it then once you hit the insert. And now hit extrude along normals again. So if you don't have the shortcut, Alt E, extrude along normals, because I want to extrude in both directions, not just one. And maybe like this. Okay, so now I know I need to move this thing up. And I can just hit L while my mouse is over this, so it's going to select link by seam. Well, we don't have any seam, so it's just going to select loose objects, and then maybe move it up, GZ. I think this is actually fine from the side. And maybe a little bit of details we can, with face mode, Alt click this edge, I to insert. And if we hit I twice, we're going to select individual faces. So maybe like this, and then once again E, and insert them a little bit. I'm actually not going to use the bool here. So yeah, technically this geometry is just overlapping. It's low poly. Of course, if you want, you could just then add a Boolean modifier to this tower, like add bool, and then you select the wheel we just created. Now it's like cut in there. Well, actually you should probably use a second wheel that doesn't have the insets. But you know what? I don't think we need any of that. This is low poly, and okay, so it just goes through the geometry. Okay, so now we're going to put it all together, and that means we should think about the actual functionality. So obviously I don't want the base to be moving. I need some part here on the top to be rotating on the z-axis, so it can just rotate in any direction. And of course, this one should rotate on the y-axis, and then we're going to connect this thing here. So let's do some separation, and I think what's going to rotate on the z-axis, I want, let's see, Shift Z, or Tab to go into edit mode, 1 vertex mode, 3 to go into side view, and I'm going to select those. I think this should be the part that rotates around. Maybe you also want to include this next row of faces, totally up to you. So Shift Z, and then I'm going to say P, separate by selection, and Tab to go into object mode. And we need to separate those two here. So select it, Tab, 3 face mode. So I can now go L, select this one, P, separate by selection as well. And I can join those two. So I select this one, this one, and then Shift select those holders and say Control J. And now the bottom part just disappeared because, yeah, it still has the Boolean modifier, so just remove that. That was just for demonstration. So let's rename this one base. This one we can call it center. And so let's see, the pivot is here, that's fine. The only thing that matters is that the pivot is in the middle, looking at it from the top. So if you say Z, it rotates like this, right? So the pivot here of this one is right there, that's good. And lastly, we need this one. Let's call this the head. Let's call it the holder. I think that's a bit more descriptive. And this one, of course, needs to have the center right here, so it can rotate on the y-axis. I think if we just say object, set origin to geometry, since it's symmetrical, yeah, it's in the middle. So if we say y, that looks good. Okay, so let's do the parenting. The holder should be centered to the parented to the center, and the center should be parented to the base. Okay, so let's see if we say y, looks good. Okay, and now I think we need 2 of those, so just select the object, say GZ, and I might also scale this entire thing a little bit. I'm going to say GY. So I'm going to position this first, and I think I want it to be kind of close, GY. It just makes it look like more sturdy, you could say. And once again, I'm not going to care too much that it just like cuts in here. GX, maybe just try. Nah, that looks too much. GX, move it like this. GZ. And so now I want the origin to be right here, because then we can use a mirror modifier. So I'm going to say object, set origin to 3D cursor. And now, let's see, modify bool. Okay, actually, let's apply that. Okay. We're quite certain this is where we want them to be. So I'm going to say apply and add the mirror modifier. the mirror along the y-axis, not the x. 1 is totally enough. So just one last thing. First of all, we also want to copy those, the holders. And for now, I'm just going to apply the modifiers here. And then I want the modifier of this one. So, well, I can just add a mirror modifier. So add mirror along the y. That did not work. Oh, we also need to set the origin here. So set it to y and then object, set origin to 3D cursor, and now it's also here. Again, this is only for the export into Unity, so we have these placeholders. And now, of course, we also want to make sure that the chamber is parented to this one. And they're not in the same collection, so we need to change that first. Call this one turret, and then select this, well, that's all. Hit M, move to collection, turret. So they're all in the same. And I can get the missile chamber. And I can do it in the outlier, or I can outliner, and I can also do it in here. So select this one and then shift select the wheel and say Control P, object, keep, transform. So now if I rotate the wheel Y, it's going to rotate this one with it. And I gotta say, those chambers are starting to look pretty big to me. But I think this is a good opportunity to show you how you can scale it, because it might be a little bit confusing with the modifier on. Because if you select it and then scale it down, and then I'm gonna say GZ, that's all fine. But as soon as I hit GY, this is gonna happen. But of course, really what you have to do is you just focus on one side, and then you go back to and say object, set origin to 3D cursor, and then it's gonna adjust the second one. And yeah, it did the same for the what's called the placeholder. So objects, set origin to 3D cursor. Now they're back in the same place. On the side note, I also noticed we didn't mirror this one. So also needs the origin here. So object, set origin to 3D cursor. And then what we can do is we shift select this one, Control L, and we say somewhere here, copy modifiers. And now I just copied the mirror modifier. So it's also on the side here. I think this is looking, yeah, this is looking better. You can move it. Let's see, let's actually try if we can rotate Y without hitting the turret. Pretty much. I think this is actually okay. We're just going to leave it at that. Though technically it's cutting into this mesh a tiny bit. So of course, totally up to you. I'm just showing you how you can do it, right? Okay, this is it for this video. I hope you learned something. And as always, if you have any kind of questions, feedback, or maybe ideas what you want to see a tutorial on, just leave a comment below or join my Discord server. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.